Does figuring out how to quilt your project just make you want to cry? Well, let's turn those tears into a source of quilting inspiration. Hi, I'm Jenna, and today we're going to learn 5 different ways to quilt teardrops. I know that figuring out how to quilt your quilt can be super frustrating and intimidating. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll be a little bit more confident to figure out how to quilt your quilt. In the free motion quilting world, teardrops are a staple and they're super versatile. So today we're going to start with the basic teardrop shape, and then I'm going to show you different variations of how you can switch it up to complement your quilting. So whether it's doing echoes or making it a tighter or looser teardrop with an echo, how can we use the teardrop shape to make your quilt pop? I know you've probably heard this a million times, but I'm gonna tell you again, to get better at your free motion quilting, doodle. It will help you so much. And when you doodle, practice putting down your pen and not picking it up till the very end. You will get better and better and better. I have this clear acrylic board that I got from my local hardware store, put some duct tape around it to make it a little bit safer. So we're gonna use this board to practice our different teardrop designs, and we are starting with the basic teardrop. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna start with a point. You're gonna go make a curve and meet back up at that point. You can do different variations of it. You can make the butt of the teardrop a little bit wider. You can make it skinnier. You can add a little curvature to it. Whatever teardrop shape you wanna do, you just wanna practice it until you feel like yours are pretty consistent. And now we can try to quilt it out. Before we quilt out our basic teardrop shape, I want to give you a couple tips when it comes to quilting curves, specifically with your stitches per inch or your SPI. When you are quilting curves, you want a shorter stitch per inch. I like to use either 13 stitches per inch or go anywhere as small as 16 stitches per inch. The smaller your teardrop, the smaller your stitches need to be for that curve to look good and organic. So for this one, I'm gonna start with 13 stitches per inch, and we're gonna do kind of a bigger teardrop. We have our first point, and I'm gonna go around, curve it, and meet it back up at that point. Just for practice sake, I'm just gonna go this way. Go around, meet it up at that point. So maybe I wanna make my butt so big, and I'm coming back. Maybe I want to do it straight with the butt so big and come back. Maybe I want it super long and skinny. And as I'm looking at all of these different shapes, you can notice that they're not super consistent. Consistency comes with practice over time. So if I sat and did this shape, let's see, let's do a couple of them. Let's see. If I want all of my shapes to look like that, I'm just gonna practice them over and over and over. And the more I make them, the better I will get. And now those ones are looking more consistent, right? I think it is so fun looking at a quilt from top to bottom, because when I try a new design, I notice that at the top, I can definitely see that my shapes are a little bit more wonky, but when it gets to the bottom, everything is looking consistent about like halfway down, and it makes me so happy to see that consistency. And guess what? The top part that isn't as consistent, nobody will notice except for you. So be easy on yourself, go easy. Now that you've got the basics down, let's move to the first variation of the teardrop shape. So you've got the basic teardrop shape down, and now we're ready to move on to our first variation, which is the teardrop meander. And just like you meander like normal, like a little meander, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna add different teardrop shapes along the way. We are gonna start by doing a little line, little curve. Then we're gonna swoop around to create that teardrop shape, and we wanna make sure that the top of our teardrop meets back at our starting point. Then we're gonna add another little curve. I'm gonna do it on the opposite side because I like going back and forth between sides, and continue that pattern. You can change up the size of your teardrops to be whatever you want. Now let's try to stitch it out. There definitely are some differences between drawing out your meander, your teardrop meander, and quilting it. One that I find messes with my brain most often is when I'm drawing out my teardrop meander and I have a thicker marker like the one I was using. I feel like my designs look really good. But when you're using thread, which is a lot thinner, there is more room for error. And so this is why I like to use a open toe foot so that I have more visibility so I can see exactly where I am quilting. So with this teardrop meander, I'm gonna start at one point. I'm gonna do a little swishy swishy. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna go back around to my teardrop. Notice how my start line and my finish line meets up. Then I'm gonna curve and do that again. They meet up. I'll go to a different spot. And as I'm doing this meander, my goal is to have even-sized teardrops, but you can even see like that one is a little bit bigger. This one is a little bit more curvy than some of them, and that is okay. Also, maybe you don't want your teardrops consistent. Maybe you want them various sizes to add to the whimsicalness of it. And if you're wondering, I am using the variegated thread winter market, and I think it is popping so beautifully on this black fabric. The next few variations of the teardrop shape that I'll show you are gonna be really great for filler work. So anytime you want to quilt a large area for your background, these are gonna be amazing. And you can choose the different variation based off of what complements your quilt well. And we're gonna start with a teardrop with a tight echo. To do this, you're gonna start with your basic teardrop shape, and then wherever your starting point is, you're going to echo back to that starting point again. And I like to do it 3 times, and then to move to my next part, I'm just going to move my piece and start that new teardrop shape. And when you're doing echoing with a teardrop shape, you wanna make sure to go back and forth and do that bounce back and forth because you get a more consistent look than going in a circle. And you just keep doing this until your whole area is filled the way you want it to be. With this tighter teardrop echo, you can also do variations of it, right? So if I have a space I want to fill with really, really tiny, tiny, tiny micro detail, I think doing a tiny teardrop with bouncing back and forth is really fun. But the key to the tight echo is just making sure that all of these bounce backs meet back up at that point. Now let's try to quilt it out. We're gonna start with our teardrop shape. I'm gonna make sure it connects, and then I'm gonna bounce back, make sure it connects. Do you notice how I didn't bounce that one back? Hee 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 hee. Now we're gonna move to our next area. These two pieces are kind of close together, so instead of bouncing it, I may just go around this way. And if you wanted to, you can even make this tighter by making sure that all of your lines are connecting. So from right here, I'm gonna start making these a little bit tighter just to show you the different variation of how you can do this. So right here, I'll start the next one. Bounce, make it connect. Bounce, make it connect. I'll start the next one here. And to make it even tighter, do you notice how I just went over that same line that I stitched earlier? That way it's leaving no spaces. And then again, you can switch this up by making the teardrops a different shape. So let's do a big round teardrop. I want you to look at these 3 different versions of the teardrop echo and think back to the quilts that you need to quilt. Would any of these look good as filler in the background for them? Do you like the looser kind of echo? Do you like it all super close together? Do you like it rounder? Do you like it smaller, bigger? Let me know in the comments if you have a quilt top that you think would work with this. This next variation expands on the teardrop with the echo, except we're gonna make it a little bit more loosey-goosey. So I'm gonna start by making my teardrop shape, except I'm not gonna meet up at that original point. I'm gonna get close to it, but I'm not actually gonna get all the way there. and then I'm gonna bounce back, and I'm not gonna meet up again, but I'm gonna get close to it and not meet up all the way. And I'll bounce back again, and again, I'm not actually touching that point. And all I'm doing is doing little bounce backs. I love this one because I feel like it's a little bit more organic. This version of a teardrop echo, you can see the mistakes a lot less. And this one is super fun too to do really large. So if you have a large space to fill up, you can kind of switch up the design to fit your need. Let's see how we're gonna quilt this guy out. We're gonna jump straight into our loose teardrop echo. I'm gonna come here. And you can notice that for both of these, I bounced to the right. So you can switch it up by bouncing to the left. These guys are looking pretty good and pretty consistent. Let's switch up the shape of our teardrop and see what happens. Let's go more round with it this time. When looking at these, can you see the difference it makes in changing up the shape of your teardrop? Or even you can change up the distance between your echoes and see if that does something to you. So let's do that. You can see the way that changing up the distance between the echoes changes the way it looks too. And this is a fun one just to experiment on throughout your quilt. So now let's switch it up a little bit. And this is what's fun about free motion quilting is you can kind of switch up the design in any way you want. And this one, we are gonna do a loose echo, but we're gonna make it a little wonky and make our teardrops a little bit curvy. We are going to start by creating a more curved teardrop shape. And that, to me, just means that one side is gonna be a little bit straighter or curved out, and the other side is gonna just be curved a little bit more in. And every time I bounce back, I want to make sure to accentuate that wonkiness of the teardrop shape. All you're doing is making sure that your teardrop shape is just bent a little bit. And this one, it just takes practice. Any new variation of something that you're gonna learn or do for the first time, it really does just take practice, and that's the only way to get better. Let's move on to quilting out our bent teardrop with the loose echo. So again, we are coming out with a wonkier teardrop shape, and we're gonna echo it. I don't know about y'all, but when I was learning how to free motion quilt, especially the teardrop shape with the echo, and you had to move it from one area to another across the quilt, in my brain, I was like, okay, I know how to do the echo shape, and I know how to do the teardrop, but how do I move it from one space to another without it looking weird? And my biggest advice to you, do what feels natural. Don't second guess yourself, because if I second guess myself when moving on to the next area, my lines aren't as straight, they aren't as consistent. Sometimes I'll go one area and I'll be like, oh, I didn't like that, and move to the other area, and when my lines are supposed to be curvy, there's points in them that just don't make sense. What I like to do is I like to just follow the curvature of whatever pieces I'm doing. For me, I liked this shape, but doing another wonky guy right here, I feel like that doesn't fit the look I want. I want a little bit more spaced out. So I'm just following a line along these curves. And then I can come back in here and fill up this space. And as I did that, I noticed that there's this space right here, so I'm just gonna go in and fill that guy in a little bit. I love this shape. I just like it because it is more whimsical and it's more fun and flowy, and it kind of reminds me of wind, and especially with this thread, I am loving it. I don't use variegated very often, but every time I use it, I just think, Jenna, why aren't you using variegated thread? This is gorgeous. And just like in all of the other variations, with this one, you can change up the look and feel of it by changing the size of your teardrop and the distance between your echoes. We're gonna do an elongated teardrop with a loose echo. I don't know if you can tell a pattern, but I really love a loose echo. I just love the way it looks. You're gonna have your starting point, draw out your line, and create a long teardrop shape. And when I bounce back, I kind of like to make sure that these side lines are closer to my teardrop shape, and then the curve is a little bit further, and this helps elongate it even more. And the point of this kind of teardrop echo shape is to use long lines. And I think that this version of a teardrop is super fun for wood grain or for fire. You can just kind of play around with it any way you want. I feel like this is looking pretty good. Let's quilt out our final teardrop shape. So remember, with this one, we're doing long lines, bouncing back, bouncing back. If you like the look of a longer teardrop, make sure that as you're creating your echoes, you are using long lines and long strokes. For example, to make this teardrop shape appear a little bit longer, I made sure that it was skinny. And then when I did my bounce back, my first bounce back starts right here. Then it goes a little bit longer. And what that does is it just helps elongate that teardrop shape even more. This kind of teardrop is my favorite to give a wood grainy look or effect, and to do that, you just do a lot less teardrops, but you make them longer, and you use longer strokes in between. Add a couple of wavy lines, and I'll come back around. And by adding the longer lines in between our little teardrop echoing shape, we have more of a wood grain look, and I think it's so much fun. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I hope you learned something new. If you feel more confident to go use teardrops in your free motion quilting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Grace Company for more fun quilting content. See you next time.